What is up, everyone? Today we are going to be ranking a bunch of Walking Dead locations, only the most prominent locations. I just chose the ones that I felt like meant the most to the show. Either they were there for a long period of time or just for a little bit, but it meant a lot to whatever was happening at that point. And what do I mean by location? Like, obviously you know what a location is, but what do I mean by ranking them? It's a little bit of a couple different things. First of all, just how cool the location is itself, how unique is it, how interesting is it, like how good is the environment in this area, how enjoyable is the atmosphere of it, that sort of thing. But also the story surrounding this location at that point in the show where it's at. So if there's really good battles, really good storylines that happen at this particular location, that could definitely put it higher on the list. It just has to be an interesting place where interesting things happen. That's a big part of it. Let's just get right into it. A lot of these locations also change a lot throughout the series. Some of them have been around for a long time and they change a lot. I'm ranking them as a whole. So from start to finish, wherever it started, wherever it is now, ranking the entirety of it. So let's start off with Atlanta. So obviously this is, a real place. It's a whole ass city. They were there in the first couple episodes of season 1. They were there for a little bit actually. And then we saw it again later in season 5 with the hospital arc. Now, obviously, the hospital is a separate thing on this list, but they were in different areas of Atlanta in season 5 as well. And I gotta say, I really like it in terms of the environments and such, because cities are awesome, right? They don't really go to cities that often in the show simply because, they're pretty expensive to shoot in, and obviously if they can't get an actual city to shoot in, they got to make it look like an actual city, and usually that's not very easy to do unless you have a lot of CGI, and it just starts to look a little wonky. So they don't film in cities all that often. The majority of The Walking Dead is in woods and middle of nowhere type areas, which I think is one of the downfalls of the show. I would love to see more cities. But when we did get to see Atlanta, I thought it was really cool. Really awesome stuff. Only issue is I don't really think any of the storylines that happened in Atlanta were all that interesting. Season 1, a couple of good things there. I love the episode Guts when, Rick first meets Glenn and the rest of the group and he's stuck in the tank. All that stuff is great, right? But the stuff later on with that Vatos group, I thought the stuff in the camp at season 1 was actually more interesting, to be honest. I thought the Vatos group, because it was kind of anticlimactic in the end, how it ended up being not a big problem. But it was kind of cool how they did that because it was kind of mirroring what was happening at the camp. But again, the interesting stuff was actually happening at the camp in that episode, at least in my opinion. So it was still cool to see. It was a nice location. And then in season 5, you guys know I don't even like that hospital arc. So even though it was cool to see Atlanta again, that whole arc just wasn't an interesting story to me. So that definitely lowers it a little bit for me. But it's still cool to go to Atlanta. I'm going to give it B just for that. It's a city. It's very unique in that way that it's the only time we actually get to see a city on this show. Now, the season 1 quarry campsite place, although I said the storylines here were a little more interesting than what was going on in Atlanta in season 1, that doesn't change the fact that I still think it's a little bit lower just because it's less interesting of a location. It was nice. The scenery was interesting. You had, it was a quarry, I guess. There was a nice little lake there as well that Andrea and Amy were kind of fishing in that one scene. And I thought it was fine for the first season, but in general, it's not really one of the more memorable locations. It obviously didn't cost them much budget to film here. Obviously, it's just a little quarry. I'm sure they could probably rent that for cheap to film it. I'm sure it wasn't anything too crazy. It's fine. It's not going to go in D. It's not like bad or anything. It's not like I hated the location. I didn't dread every second we were there, but yeah, it's just fine. CDC, the CDC. So this was an interesting one because a lot of people didn't like this episode solely because it was explaining a lot about the virus, when I think one of the main appeals of the show is that it wasn't going to be focused on the virus. It was just going to be focused on the world and the people and how it changes people. But I think giving us just little details was okay. I kind of liked getting little details of what was going on there, and the place looked interesting in the inside. I thought the episode could have been done a little bit better, maybe, especially towards the end. But because the whole thing with Jenner and his decision of what he was trying to convey, what he was trying to do to the people, I wasn't a big fan of that little storyline there because it felt off, like Dr. Jenner, where he was talking to the group and he was like, "Oh no, you guys are all dying with me." And then he kind of just changed his mind just from a little discussion. It was a little sudden, but it was a cool location, but not that cool. So I'm going to put it, we were only there for one episode. It's hard to judge some of these locations because, like I said, they're not that integral to the story. They're only there for a little bit, but yeah, I'm going to leave it on C. It's cool to see a, government-like place. But that's really, it's not much more interesting than that. It was only there for an episode. Herschel's Farm. I know people probably weren't happy that they were there for 13 episodes. I think one of the main reasons people felt that way is because the comics, they were there for like not much time at all. So in the show, it felt a lot different. But obviously that was for budget reasons. They couldn't do anything else about it. So, but I gotta be honest, I really like Herschel's farm. First of all, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It is really just an incredible sight, his farm. I actually recreated his farm in Minecraft, and that was a lot of fun. But it's just a gorgeous place. I love the look of this house, and I love the interior of it, the design and everything. And you got the barn, and it's just a really just big open field, and it feels so just free. You know, I really, really like that feel that the farm gives off. So I'm actually going to give it an A. In Season 2, you know, there's certain parts of Season 2 I like a lot more than others. I love 2B. I don't really like 2A as much, though. I think you guys know that if you watch my seasons ranking video. But the location itself, I don't know what it was. It felt good. You know, a lot of the drama and dialogue and stuff that was in this part of the show was, in my opinion, some of the best in the series. And I think a lot of what helped that was the location. You know, it also made for a really great scene towards the end of the season, actually, with the finale, where they were attacked by that herd. And seeing a herd roll through a farm, just there was something about that was just really cool. And it made, like I've said, for one of the best episodes in the show. So Herschel's Farm is definitely A. It's not higher than that because it's definitely, like, I'm thinking of like top tier places. It's definitely not going to compare to those top tier places. But it was great. Introduced us to a lot of great characters as well. So for that, gotta give it A tier. The prison, don't have to think about it. That's easy S, obviously. This is definitely one of the most iconic places in The Walking Dead. Not only was it within some of my favorite parts of the show, with 4A especially. 4A is one of my favorite, you know, parts of the show. You guys know that. But even though Season 3, one of the best things about Season 3, I don't think Season 3 is one of the better seasons, but one of the best things about it is the prison. The location itself is so interesting because they're already in this very dark and depressing world. So to see them be in this dark and depressing location just is really interesting. And I love what they do with the prisoners there, how the prisoners were still there throughout, you know, from the start of the apocalypse till now, and they just haven't left. And a lot of the walkers inside were just other prisoners, you know, so when they were taking out the prison at first, it was just literally a bunch of prisoners. And the whole idea of that, I just thought was really well executed. And then eventually in Season 4, they turned this dull, dark, depressing place into something worth living in. It's a nice community that has, you know, farms and pigs and everything. And I love how the prison was developed into Season 4. I thought that was one of the best things about 4A, is how they did that. I remember seeing the trailer for Season 4 for the first time, seeing all the new stuff, like the new gates, and how they took inspiration from the place that they found with Morgan back in Season 3, and with the spikes and stuff. And all that was just so awesome. And then it made for, of course, one of the best, the best episode of the show, in my opinion, Too Far Gone, with that amazing battle. Seeing a battle at the prison, we saw multiple battles before there in Season 3 as well, but the prison battles were always really intense, and I really enjoyed pretty much every second of that. So yeah, the prison's S tier easily. Woodbury, I think, could have gotten more use out of it, but it was, for the most part, pretty solid. It was the first time we saw a community that was kind of like the old world, but not exactly. You know, obviously we see more like that later on, but this felt, you know, more like the old world, definitely more than any of these other locations, because, you know, there were like houses and apartments and stuff. Not really houses, but they're mostly just apartments, right? Like apartment complexes and just like stores and buildings and stuff. And we didn't see too much of it, to be honest. Like, we saw the couple rooms that, you know, Andrea was sleeping in with Michonne, and we saw the governor's apartment. We saw a couple of weird, creepy places where governor kept people captive. But other than that, we didn't see too many like interior places in Woodbury, and the outside area was cool for a couple episodes. I don't think we were here enough for me to care that much about it, though. And then obviously after Season 3, we never saw it again, except for that one scene where Governor came back and destroyed it. So I'm gonna give it B. I think it's fine. Yeah, I think the one battle there in Episode 8 was pretty cool, so that's definitely a positive. I do think they could have used it a little bit more. We could have seen it one more time in like a battle type, you know, thing. Maybe like the season finale, maybe they could have incorporated another battle in there somehow. I don't know. But I think it's a good location. Terminus. Now, Terminus is only going to get high on the list for me solely because of the creepiness of it and the storyline of what brought from Terminus. And that's, of course, the Hunters arc, the cannibals and all that. That's what's going to give it A tier for me. They weren't there for that long. They were there for 2 episodes, really. Like, we only really saw it substantially for 2 episodes. And even in those 2 episodes, it wasn't that interesting of a location. I mean, it was kind of just like a warehouse, factory type place. There wasn't anything too intriguing about it. I think they actually filmed it at the same set of the prison, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. There's a lot of places that they film the same thing at. I don't know how they do that because it's very... I don't know. There's some locations they film at the prison location, I think. I'm not sure if it was Terminus or something else, but regardless, they do a really good job of making it look very different because I know a couple of these locations are filmed at the same exact place. But I don't know. Terminus to me didn't look that interesting. That's the only thing keeping out of S. But again, the Terminus storyline, the Hunters, that couple episodes, some of the best stuff from The Walking Dead. Right, and of course the No Sanctuary episode and everything that happens there was just wow, awesome. And just the creepiness of it when they were running through it in the season 4 finale, and you just see people banging on doors, screaming help. You see these like, you know, decaying bodies just like in cages. It was such a creepy place. That's what gives it to me. That's what makes it A tier for me. It's just such a creepy location, and it all comes at the end of the train tracks, all where people are probably going to be following, which is pretty intelligent by them to do that because they know people are probably going to follow train tracks because, you know, usually tracks lead somewhere instead of just them following, you know, going randomly in the woods and they might circle back around and get lost. Tracks are not going to get lost. They just go one location, one straight away. So it was really smart of the Terminus or the Termites, Hunters, whatever you want to call them, to do that. I don't know. It was a cool idea, and it made for, in my opinion, a really solid couple of episodes. But like I said, it's still a pretty boring place otherwise, so I mean, can't give it too much credit. Gabriel's church. Now, this was pretty cool, actually. I thought it was a really good-looking church. Like, I don't know what it was about the feeling of it. I also, you know, really liked the episode that they were there. The only episode that they were prominently there really was obviously episode 2 and episode 3 of season 5. We were there for a little bit later on, too, but only for like a couple scenes, and it wasn't anything substantial. But, I mean, I think they built this church solely for the show as well. It wasn't there before, and it's a good looking church, but we have seen multiple churches before in the show, and it wasn't like the most unique location ever for that, but it was nice to see, especially for Gabriel's, you know, introduction of his character, who ended up being one of the most important characters in the entire show later on, which is crazy. But at the end of the day, I mean, nothing too crazy happened here other than Rick killing, you know, Gareth and all them, which I thought was a really amazing scene, one of the best scenes in the show. But that's about all that happened here, to be honest. The only memorable moments, the only ones that stand out to me. So I'm gonna give it a B though, just because of that scene, and because again, it's just a really good looking church. I don't know what it is, it's a really, really awesome looking place. And next we have the hospital, Grady Memorial Hospital, the one from the hospital arc. Yeah, it's going to D. I mean, I already don't care too much for hospitals in general. I don't know about what it is about hospitals, but the aesthetic of hospitals just, I don't like them. I don't like being in them in real life, and I don't like most shows or movies that are set in them. They're just, I like dark and depressing things in film, but this isn't even just dark and depressing. It's just boring to me. I don't know what it is. They're just boring. And this arc is boring too. So that doesn't help. I love, you know, the Atlanta location surrounding it, but the hospital itself just wasn't interesting. I don't know. Like I said, the stories weren't interesting. Dawn wasn't interesting. What they did with Beth, I don't think was that interesting. It had one shocking moment where Beth died, and that's it. I don't have much else to say about it. It was just a boring location. Simple as that. Alexandria, S tier, along with the prison, of course. Alexandria is, to me, the most iconic Walking Dead location now, because they've been there the longest. This, I think, is definitely the one we've seen the most of out of any of these, because we've been there since season 5, and we're now on season 11, so we've been there for 6 damn seasons. It's more than half of the show, which is insane. And it's gone through the most changes. I mean, just think of how it looked in season 5 compared to how it looks, you know, in season 9, and then how it looks in season 10 and 11, and now it's depressing that like no one's there. Well, I know Commonwealth just took it over actually, and I really hope they do end the show with them returning to Alexandria and like remaking it, you know, with Commonwealth having, you know, whatever Commonwealth plans to do after Lance is probably going to get, you know, taken over in 11C. I'm sure they'll do something with that. I do hope they go back there. I hope they redo it and they fix up the stuff that was destroyed. A lot of important events happen here. No Way Out was a big one, obviously. Even just the start of season 5 and everything that happens with that was great. But No Way Out was probably the most substantial event that happens here. And then, of course, when we get into All Out War, you have at least 2 battles here. You have the season 7 finale battle, which is, in my opinion, one of the best battles in the show. And then you have the bombing of Alexandria in 808, which I thought was fine. Like, it was cool for the show, but compared to the comics, it was actually a little underwhelming, in my opinion, because the comics had a little bit. The comics was a little more exciting. Like, you had people getting their legs blown off and shit. You had Jesus throwing back grenades. Like, I thought that was a little bit cooler than what they did in the show. The show was just Carl like running around and getting people into the sewers, which I guess they had to do something like that to kind of, you know, give his character closure because he was going to get killed off. But it's still cool, right? And then season 9, they again redo. After the big time jump, they redo a lot of different things. They add a lot of new locations, and it was really cool. The whole windmill and everything, and the fact that they used Maggie's, or it was Georgie's schematics that she gave to Maggie, the fact that they used those to build all these things was just really cool. And then later on, you know, we get not too much more going on here. There's no like substantial battles at Alexandria anymore, unfortunately. I wished we had a certain doom happen in Alexandria like we did in the comics. Maybe they thought that would be too similar to No Way Out, but that's kind of the point. I was really excited for a certain Doom storyline to be presented in the show, and they didn't really do it well, in my opinion. I'm not going to, you know, talk about that now, but I just didn't like how they did it at a hospital instead, and they kind of glossed over it. You know what I mean? I really liked how they did a certain Doom in the comics, and the way it happened in Alexandria. I thought that would have been really cool in the show, and like I said, unfortunately they didn't do it. And in my opinion, Alexandria just hasn't been that interesting in season 11. They, like I said, they haven't done much with it. I mean, it makes sense. We're kind of focused on Commonwealth. I get that. But anything that happened in Alexandria in season 11, I thought was just not interesting. Yeah, they had the storm happen. The storm was, I hate to say it, it was kind of pointless. I was just there, I guess, to show the hardships of the community right before Commonwealth came. But that's really all it did, and it felt like it took up way too much time, and it was more there to just have an intense finale and mid-season premiere rather than, you know, actually being important to the story. But that's besides the point. Alexandria is S tier because it's awesome. It's Alexandria. Hilltop is also going to get S tier because, again, it's, in my opinion, just as iconic. When they introduced Hilltop, I thought it was one of the best adaptations from the comics that they've ever done in the show. That episode when they first introduced Hilltop, it was like wow, because at this point in the series I was caught up with the comics. This is around the time I started reading the comics, and when I caught up, I was, you know, I read the Hilltop stuff and I thought the Hilltop stuff was really cool. They adapted the Hilltop stuff so goddamn well. I was like, this is incredible, and the way this place looks is just magnificent. And again, just like Alexandria, after the time jump, they redo it, and it looks amazing after they redo it. It's really cool. And then, of course, they use Hilltop not too much in season 7. Season 7, it was just mainly used for like the meetings between Gregory and Simon, but into season 8, they use it a little bit more after Alexandria gets bombed and they all have to go to Hilltop. And now they're all at Hilltop, and we get that battle in season 8 at Hilltop, which I thought was a pretty interesting battle. And then we get to see it most prominently used, I would say, later in season 10 with the big Whisper battle, the Battle of Hilltop during the Whisper War. And I thought that battle was fine. I just didn't think it was as good as it was in the comics. Unfortunately, there was a couple of things that they didn't do as good as the comics. For example, Lydia, she should have been killing Whispers. I'm sorry. They did her character dirty, in my opinion. She was so much cooler in the comics. Cassie McClincy's been killing it as Lydia, but like, you should have had her be as badass as comic Lydia. That she should have been killing Whispers left, right, and center in that scene. I know she didn't want to kill Whispers, but that's what would have made it so much cooler if she finally realized she has to kill them. She has to. They're attacking her new family. She has to protect them, and she'll start killing them. And that would have been awesome. But they kind of just, she like maybe smacked one in the head at one point. I don't remember. I don't think she killed any though. Maybe I'm forgetting, but they didn't make it a big point, is what I'm saying. And it wasn't as long as I feel like it should have been, because that battle was incredible in the comics. I felt like if they did it just a little bit longer with a little bit more scenes that really made things feel more intense, I would have preferred it. But it was still a really solid battle regardless. And then ever since then, it's been destroyed, and we've only seen it here and there in season 11 because Maggie went back to it because she wanted to essentially redo it, and she didn't really succeed. She didn't succeed at all. Instead, she said, screw it, let's blow up this place when the Commonwealth soldiers come in, and then she left. So I don't know if she's ever going to go back. I have no idea. Well, actually, no, because Commonwealth took it over. So now if she wants it, I mean, what is she going to do? I don't know. She'll have to take it over, I guess. I don't know how the hell she'll do that, but Hilltop's awesome. Now the Kingdom. So the Kingdom's an interesting one because this actually lasted a lot longer in the comics than it did in the show. The show kind of got rid of the Kingdom at the end of season 9. And I know why they did. I'm not 100% certain why they did, but I can pretty accurately say it's probably just because they didn't want to pay for the location anymore, and they didn't really think they wanted to shoot there anymore anyways, so they were like, oh, let's just get rid of it. Because in the comics, it stays around. It does. It's there till the end of the show, I think, or to the end of the comic run. It was just not really on screen all that much. There weren't many important characters that were there, so it didn't really have a big impact on the series. I think the location as a whole wasn't that interesting. It was just kind of like a community. It had, like, you know, a couple interior places that we've seen. The theater room was probably the coolest place, where he was kind of, you know, pretending to be the king and stuff. And I thought that was cool. And I liked it in season 7, the couple episodes we had there. I thought it was a very, like, religious feeling place almost. I don't know why. It had like the spiritual vibe to it. I don't even know how to explain that, but it felt good. Like, it felt peaceful. And then in season 8, they didn't really utilize it all that much. They had that one thing that happened towards the mid-season where Gavin and his people came. But I didn't think it was that interesting. I think the main reason why we didn't see too much of it is because Ezekiel wanted to keep the whole Savior conflict away from the Kingdom, so he was always having their meetings away from the Kingdom. So like I said, we didn't see too much of it, and when we did, I never thought it was that interesting. But I would say what makes Kingdom a little bit more interesting, and what's actually going to put it in A tier, was the fair. The fair in season 9 was awesome, right? I think we could all agree that the whole fair thing was pretty cool, and seeing all the community members there all at once and the different things that they were doing at the fair, all the different trading and stuff, it was one of my favorite episodes because of that. Not just because of the Pike reveals. I thought the Pike reveals was a great scene, but the stuff with the fair, the whole episode, I thought was just really cool. And again, it had a pretty big importance on Ezekiel's character especially, so it has to mean something. I think giving it A tier is pretty much fair. It's not in the same tier as those top 3, but it's up there. Sanctuary. I don't know. This is a tough one because we saw it for 2 seasons. Saw it only once again in season 9, but it was just for like a little, you know, Negan just revisiting his old home thing. But it was really only prominent in 2 seasons. It felt really factory-like on the interior, that's for sure. I kind of wish we had more like battles here. I guess there wasn't really anything, to be honest, other than, you know, them attacking it in season 8 in the premiere, and they shot out the windows and they like trapped them all in with the Walker herd. That's really all that happened. And so I can't really say that there was anything too interesting here, but it is Negan's home, and the Negan stuff here was always great. The meetings he had with Simon and the one with Gregory he had as well, like all those meetings were great. All those scenes were great. The different scenes in the factory, the episode when Carl showed up with the M16, he was trying to kill him. That all that stuff was great. But I think as a whole, I'm gonna give this one. This is a really tough one, to be honest. It is. But I'm gonna say A. Yeah, I'm gonna say A. I think it's a good location. You know, it's not S tier, but I think it's definitely got to be better than these bottom ones here. I mean, it still is a pretty cool factory. It is a very villainous-like place. It definitely gives off a villainous aurora. If that's a good way to put it, I guess. Yeah. Oceanside. I'm gonna put it in B, solely because I think Oceanside as a group was wildly underused. You know, we spent a whole episode introducing this community, and I thought it was really cool. I really did. I think this place is awesome. It's like got a, you know, jungle vibe to it. They're very much in a secluded location. That's the whole point. They're, you know, in hiding. But then we don't really see them like at all in season 8, which I thought was the stupidest thing. I like season 8, but the fact that Oceanside doesn't show up till like the last episode, and that's it, and all they do is throw some Molotovs, it's like, okay, they didn't even do much. Like, such a waste, man. I don't know what they were thinking with that. They had a whole bunch of stuff with them in season 7, and then Enid and Aaron were trying their asses off to try to get them to join in season 8, and then they don't join the last episode. It was really weird. They didn't like do anything too important either. So that was an L. That's the group though, that's not the community, but still, I think it's important to mention the people within the group as well. And like I said, I just don't think they were utilized all that much. And in season 9, thankfully, they did utilize them, and they actually had some pretty interesting storylines in the beginning of season 9. I really liked what they did with Oceanside there, but then after that, we see it like once again, and that's it. And then Oceanside disappears. Like the whole Whisperer War, pretty much, except for one episode, they were like gone. I'm like, Where the hell did Sydney go? Where the hell did like half of these characters go? I don't know. And then we don't see them at all in season 11 until randomly in episode 12 and then episode 16 when they go back. It's just very much out there community that we rarely see. But again, the location itself is still pretty damn cool. It's a pretty damn cool place, I gotta say. It really is. It has like a log cabin type feel, you know? Yeah, I like it. I just wish they had like a battle here, at least one battle, at least one thing. I was hoping the Whisper War would have a battle here. They really teased it to be like that because the season 10 trailer had a lot of stuff at Oceanside because they were training in Oceanside, but nothing substantial happens there. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an L. The junkyard, the heaps, whatever you want to call it, the scrapyard, I don't know, whatever. This was actually a place that I was hoping to see more of in season 8. We saw it like maybe once or twice more, and when we did see it, I didn't think it was that interesting, unfortunately. And yeah, it's just garbage, but I have the unpopular opinion where I actually thought this group had some potential, and I do like how they ended it. I do like how they ended this group, but I'm putting it on C because they didn't really give us much time to understand this group. I think it made sense to me. They were, you know, Jadis explains it in episode 10 of season 8 where she's like, they just wanted to have their own thing, right? They wanted to be different or whatever. So I guess that makes sense, but they kind of just killed them all off before we could really take time to understand that sort of a thing. And I guess it makes sense, but they don't really do much with it after that. And Jadis doesn't really do much after that either. We know she goes to World Beyond. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what she does there. But in the main show, all she does is kind of like take part in Rick's exit, which I think was important. So that alone makes this group necessary in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like they could have done so much more. You know what I mean? Like they could have done more than what they did. And the junkyard location itself, the only reason it's not in D is because the Winslow Walker was awesome. That was fucking awesome. That was one of the coolest things The Walking Dead did. And the fact that they didn't do more of that is an L. It's just, come on. Like, I was so excited. I remember doing like, you know, ever do like mental fan fiction where you're like looking forward to something and you kind of imagine in your head what you'd like it to be. Season 8, I was hoping that the scavengers were going to be like a threat to Rick's group because they obviously betrayed them at the end of season 7. So it only makes sense to me that they would be a threat in season 8 as well. I was hoping they would be getting a bunch of walkers and putting spikes on them like they did with the one Winslow Walker that Rick went against, and they would just be sending the like waves of these spiked walkers towards our communities. That would be freaking insane. Imagine those things were really cool, and I wish they did more with that. I liked what they did with Jadis's character there, but again, they didn't do enough. And yeah, it is just a junkyard, so it's not like it's the most interesting location ever, and they probably had some of the worst green screen CGI I've ever seen in a show in that one scene when Rick stepped up and you could see like the distance of the scrapyard. Like they didn't have to make the scrapyard that big looking. They didn't have to do that. They could have just kept the little scrapyard area that we had. So I don't know. They just wanted to do a cool shot, but it ended up being just some crappy CGI. Unfortunately, it is what it is, I guess. I don't know. Next up, this is a weird one. I didn't really know if I should include it or not, but we spent a lot of time here in air quotes because it's actually multiple locations. This is the Whisper camps, all the various Whisper camps. Now, the Whispers were mostly on the move. They were never in just one place. They were always just moving through the woods, living like rabid dogs. So they were always on the move. And I get that. That makes sense for these characters to be living in the woods. That makes sense. That's who they are. You know, Alpha's all about, oh, you know, we're feral animals or whatever. We have to act like them and stuff. That's all the Whispers are about. So it makes sense why they were always in the woods. I'm not gonna say that they should have done that any differently. But that doesn't change the fact that woods gets so boring in this show. We've seen so much woods and woods and woods. I just get sick of it. Maybe if we didn't see so much woods up to this point, I would have been okay with it. I gotta put it in D. Season 10 spent so much time of the Whispers in the woods. Holy shit, I mean, especially with like Alpha talking to Gamma and stuff, and it was just always Whispers and woods, and I was just like, dude, can we at least get some cool looking woods though? Like, you can do woods, but get some interesting looking locations. Because, I mean, I have a lot of woods by my house. There's some really beautiful landscapes out in the woods in some places. Some really cool river locations and stuff. Some really cool, like, open fields in the middle of the woods and stuff. A lot of cool stuff like that. And I don't feel like they do enough of that here. I feel like most of it is just the most stereotypical woods you'll ever see. It's just like flat land with trees. And it gets so boring so quick. I just did not like the stuff in the woods with the Whispers. I like the Whispers as people, as a group, as a community. And I will say this so many times because it's the opinion of mine that I feel like is really unpopular, but I feel really passionate about it. I think the Whispers were kind of done dirty in the show. The idea of them and the concept of them is great. The way they introduced them was fantastic in season 9, but I think season 10 heavily nerfed them. So not even looking at the location, just thinking of the group there, those storylines there, the Whispers felt so damn nerfed. The only Whispers that did any damage were Alpha, Beta, and the Herd they used. But the Whispers themselves, not a single one of them felt like they can ever do any damage to any person in the entire show. They felt like stormtroopers, but like to the max. Like it was just so meh. I wish the Whispers were more of a threat in season 10. I wish more of them actually killed people that we cared about, not necessarily main characters, but like, red shirts or whatever during these battles. I think the Whisper War it could have been so much better. It could have been so much better. I might do a video on that, actually talking about things that are most disappointing to me in the show, or things that I liked more in the comics. I don't know, something like that, something along those lines. I think it'd be kind of interesting. Next up, Meridian. This is the place in season 11 where the Reapers were at. We were only there for a few episodes. I wasn't a huge fan of the Meridian storyline here with the Reapers. I didn't think they were the most interesting group. I thought Pope was kind of a boring villain. He was just this really stereotypical religious, and I think God is telling me to do evil things, so I'm gonna do evil things. It was probably one of the most boring villains in The Walking Dead, in my opinion, so I didn't like that. And the location itself was shit. I'll be completely honest, it was shit. It just felt like another factory we've seen a million times already, and it felt like a lot of the inside areas they were shooting in felt like they've shot in that same area like a million other times. So I didn't find it interesting. I think there's so many other cool locations they can definitely do. I mean, there's plenty of ideas I have in my mind as well. Like, there's so many cool places they can go to, but it's just a matter of budget. Do they have the budget to spend on a better location that's more interesting? But these type of locations that are very worn down and abandoned are usually the ones that are easier for them to get access to. So these are usually the ones that we see the most of, obviously. I mean, there was a really cool idea I had for like a mall as a location that they could have gone to a little bit more often. They did that in Fear the Walking Dead season 5, for a little bit, which I thought was cool. But in season 11, they had like one episode where there was a mall. I was like, oh my god, we're gonna see a mall in the show, and they go into like one location of it for like 5 minutes. That's all we see. So I don't know. Meridian, it's D. I did not like Meridian that much. Simple as that. Commonwealth so far, compared to the comics, honestly, like I think both of them actually were kind of meh. No, for the comics, the whole storyline I thought was meh. The show so far has been doing a lot better, but I much prefer the stuff that's going on outside of Commonwealth, like the stuff that's going on with Lance outside the walls with Maggie and Hilltop. That's the stuff about 11B that I loved. But the stuff that's happening inside of Commonwealth, I actually haven't really liked that much. There was some stuff specifically with Daryl and Rosita as soldiers that I think is really cool. Mercer is a great character. That's cool. But the stuff with Eugene, Stephanie, I don't know. All that just hasn't really been all that intriguing to me. Carol just suddenly being this like high-class person, which I don't really think makes much sense. Like, all she did was get some wine for Lance, and Lance is like, oh, I'll just give you like all these privileges out of nowhere. That was just weird to me. I don't know. She literally just got him wine. I don't know. It was a little strange. And the community does feel a lot smaller than it should. Commonwealth in the comics, yes, they had only a couple shots in I call them shots, it's really just drawings, but they had a couple drawings on different scenes on different pages that made it look a lot bigger, and I was hoping the show would kind of do that as well. But even then in the comics, it was a lot of like just interior stuff, and they didn't really explore the bigger parts of the community all that much. I wish they would though, and there's so many things even in the comics that they haven't explored yet. Like, for example, there was a football league going on in the comics, and they were like watching football games and stuff. Like, we haven't seen any of that here. We've only seen the haunted house and that stuff. It honestly just feels like another Alexandria to me. It feels like the same size as Alexandria, just a little bit more, I guess, classy. You know what I mean? Like, it feels a little more classy. That's the only difference I feel this has from Alexandria. And that's not how it should be. Commonwealth should feel like massive, like this whole new place. It's got 50,000 people, right? So I hope we see more of it in 11C. I hope they explore different areas, but so far we've just been in this one little section. Apparently all of our people live in the same section of Commonwealth. They're not spread out anywhere. And that's the same place where every other character seems to live. That seems to be where the governor always is. That seems to be where all the characters are. And it's weird. I don't know. I don't like that idea. Again, it's probably a budget thing. They could definitely do more with a higher budget, but it is what it is, I guess. I still think, you know, it's a cool change for the show, seeing this, definitely the most like the original world we've ever seen. The fact that they use money is really interesting. And I do like some of the stories, not all of them, but some of them. So I'm going to give it B. I'm going to give it B. So far it's B. It could go up in 11C. I think it definitely has potential to go up. But for now, it's going to get B. And last but not least, the apartment complex, I think they call it Riverbend, C. I like the story here. I think it's really interesting storyline, but the location itself is kind of boring. It's an apartment complex, and it's a very gray, dull, boring apartment complex. It's really boring, but I like the storyline there, and we were there for a couple episodes, so I thought it would be worth putting on the list, because why the hell not? All right, that's my ranking. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what things I should rank in The Walking Dead. We're only doing these videos because for some reason you guys are watching the living hell out of them, and I have to take advantage of that YouTube algorithm while I can. So I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.